Just about everybody in my family is a New York City cop, or was a New York City cop, or plans to be a New York City cop. And then there's me, Danny O'Connor, conductor on the BNSF. It was the railroad that showed me there was actually life west of the Hudson. If I'd fallen in line and become a cop myself, I'd probably be busting taggers instead of enjoying their work. Some of it is downright amazing. I like to critique it from time to time with my buddy who goes by D-Dub, a fellow New Yorker who keeps me honest, as only New Yorkers can. You can't bullshit Harlem. Having a New York ally comes with a price, though. He likes to bust my balls. Somebody got pulled over nearby recently, and he started yelling, "You need any help? My buddy here is really a cop in disguise." The cop was not amused. Neither was I. D-Dub thought it was hilarious. Neither of us was laughing the next day, though, when a brakeman told us about a rumor of impending layoffs due to trickle-down supply chain issues or some such bullshit. With everybody uptight about the prospect of layoffs, Dee and I decided we could all use a laugh around here, so we spiced up the yard with a little taste of the Big Apple. Nobody was laughing the next morning, though, after somebody spent the night breaking into containers down the rail yard. It's one thing for your Amazon order to be stuck on a dock in Shanghai. It's another thing to have it finally arrive and some clown walks off with it. Dee and I were due to make an intermodal run, but we weren't going anywhere until the investigation was over. Meanwhile, they asked me to escort the cops around the rail yard. As a result, I wound up seeing myself on the local 6 o'clock news. How about that? Finally, we got clearance to get that intermodal rolling. With Dee on the throttle, we set out to deliver tons of unstolen goods. At the last minute, dispatch informed us that our return trip would be a manifest and include some special cargo. An elephant. Before I climbed back into 3114 for the trip back, I called for a lift to the end of the train. No way were Dee and I going to miss seeing an elephant getting loaded. Long story short, a lawsuit freed an elephant from some crummy-ass zoo. He was on his way now to an elephant sanctuary. Took a little doing to load him. We dragged the caboose out of mothballs for the vet that went with him. Then we caught a lift back to our engine, nearly a mile away, and then we set off for home. With paparazzi awaiting our arrival, we were making good time to stay on schedule. Right up to the moment that some asshole parked his car on the tracks and took a hike. We shoved his car nearly a quarter mile down the track before we ground to a halt. You really don't want to have to slam on your brakes with an elephant in the back seat? So much for our schedule. It would take some time to get that car off the tracks. Meanwhile, I could only imagine how many crossings a train this long might be blocking, as people suffer through the world's longest goddamn concert of clanging bells. The press hung in for our eventual arrival, but it wasn't the story any of us expected. I heard there were rumbles as soon as onlookers noticed that the door was open. There was downright shock when everyone realized there's no goddamn elephant. No vet either. With layoffs looming, losing an elephant is not something you want on your performance review. Who the hell steals an elephant? And how? And why? I had a lot of questions. So did the police. They separated Dee and me and interrogated us for nearly an hour. When Sergeant Lawrence showed up and saw it was me, he busted us both loose. I guess we don't look like the elephant kidnapping type. Our day wasn't done, however. We were due to pick up a few empties at a local bakery. That took us right back where we came from. Along the way, I ran some figures, calculating where the end of the train would have been by the time we stopped with that car for a hood ornament. And bingo. I called the sergeant and told him we found a ramp about a mile out of town. As soon as we got back, I had D-Dub drive me back to the spot in a high rail. He dropped me off and split. There was an Amtrak due through there in about 20 minutes. I took off on foot on my own. I've watched a lot of cop shows on TV, but I've never seen anyone tracking elephant shit through farmland. Fortunately, it takes a minimal amount of detective skill to do so. When I reached a railroad crossing, the droppings ended. Within minutes of informing Sergeant Lawrence of where I was surrounded by a variety of squad cars. It didn't take long to ID the muddy tire tracks of a four-wheel axle truck. I was starting to feel like Sherlock Holmes. The police collected security camera footage from every gas station in a 50-mile radius. Bingo again. Now all they had to do was track down the U-Haul rental agreement. Who knows? Maybe I'll wind up on TV again. The great white elephant turd hunter saves the day. The next morning, the sergeant stopped by to fill me in, ignoring our bogus parking sign. It turns out the U-Haul was rented with a stolen ID and credit card, and the truck was never seen again either. It was back to the drawing board. By now, the missing veterinarian had become a suspect. On our next southern run, I took a lookout position. D-Dub called it Turd Watch. Call it what you like. That elephant and that vet disappeared on my watch. I felt a responsibility to do something, even if it meant looking for elephant turds. At one point, we passed a familiar rundown barn in the middle of nowhere. I'd seen it 100 times before. No people, no animals, no nothing. But now, a whole lot of hay. That made no sense. On our way back, I had Dee slow down as we approached the area. From my lookout position, I was pretty sure I heard an elephant trumpet. Dee was inside the cab. He heard nothing. I got on the phone. Dee got on the throttle. Sergeant Lawrence would be waiting for us back in the yard. It was getting late in the afternoon by the time we got back. Any attempt to approach the property in the dark by car would give a mile or two of forewarning. I suggested a Trojan horse plan, using a boxcar. Before sunset, a small army of cops was assembling, including a SWAT team, and I proceeded to climb in with them. Dee volunteered to drive the switcher and drag us out in the middle of the night and position us on a siding near the abandoned property. It was a long, dark night, but I felt strangely at home, packed into a boxcar full of cops. I just wished my family could have seen me by the light of a passing Amtrak. Once morning arrived, the SWAT team mounted their assault. I was ordered to stay well back. Not a problem, particularly when I heard someone in the distance yelling for help. The SWAT team rushed the barn. No gunfire, just an eerie quiet. They found the vet tied up in a stall. He was exhausted and semi-coherent, babbling about a parade and needing to clean Bara. When they untied him, he led him out behind the barn. They couldn't believe their eyes. Stealing an elephant is one thing. Painting an elephant is another. Once we heard that the barn was secure, we made our way down there. It was jaw-dropping to witness what they'd done. When the vet mentioned passing a shack on the way in, the SWAT team took off running again. I went looking for a ladder. I watched the vet attack that paint job with a fury. He was pissed. He said he'd overheard plans for using Bara in a parade. There are some sick people in this world. Over the radio, I heard the SWAT team clear the shack. Like the barn, it had been abandoned years ago. The only signs of life were some fast food containers. Still no sign of the perp as the SWAT team continued to clear the area. At least we knew that U-Haul was going to get their truck back. Aside from the vet, there was no one in the barn, no one in the shack, no one in the truck. There was only one place left to look. I stayed back at the barn until I heard the magic words, "We have one in custody." I ran down the road just as fast as I could, just in time to see the perp stuffed into the back of a squad car. Apparently his plan was to roll down Pennsylvania Avenue in a mocked-up copy of the Beast, the presidential limo, with that elephant in tow, and seize the White House. Most people with that sort of ambition can be found in locked psych wards. This guy was found in an outhouse. Eventually, Barra was the only one making a triumphant return. Few Hollywood stars have ever received a more joyful reception. And yes, I made it back onto the news, the national news. Seen all over New York, no doubt. And I didn't get laid off. I got promoted to yardmaster. They even agreed to give D-Dub and me some extra time off. We're planning on making a trip to an elephant sanctuary.